The kingdom of Eldrath was built on shadow and stone, its walls etched with the memories of centuries. The wind carried whispers of old magic, of curses that bound families, and of kings who ruled not just by strength, but by fear. Within these walls moved Ilara, careful and quiet, yet full of a fire she dared not show. For 8 years, she had walked with a limp, a visible flaw that protected her from the eyes of those who sought what she could not give freely. Her secret was her strength, hidden behind the mask of weakness. Ilara's small house on the edge of the city was filled with silence and the faint scent of herbs. Each morning she tended her garden, each evening she walked the streets, her eyes alert to every glance, every shadow. To the world, she was fragile, perhaps injured forever by some accident. But inside, she moved with the grace of a predator, her mind sharp and always calculating. The Festival of Lights approached, an annual celebration of the kingdom's founding. Lanterns would float across the river, casting reflections like dancing flames. Nobles would gather, their laughter sharp and rehearsed. And the Alpha King, Kalen, would appear, as he always did, with his presence filling the hall like a storm. His reputation was known to all, relentless, commanding, dangerous. Yet there was something about him that had haunted Ilara since she was a girl, something that made her pulse quicken despite her fear. Ilara had avoided the palace for years. She had avoided Kalen. But tonight, necessity had pulled her in. The festival required her skills, her knowledge of herbs, poisons, and old runes. She moved through the crowds like a shadow, careful to limp only when necessary, keeping her head down. Her heart thudded as Kalen entered the hall. He was even more imposing in person, taller than most men, his dark eyes scanning the crowd with the precision of a hawk. It was not just his power that made her nervous. It was the way he seemed to notice things others did not. He had an instinct for reading people, and Ilara knew that if he discovered her secret, the consequences would be beyond any punishment she had imagined. She forced herself to breathe slowly, keeping her limp subtle, pretending the world was ordinary. Music filled the hall, a slow, haunting melody. Couples moved to the rhythm, swirling and stepping in perfect unison. The nobles clapped politely, but all eyes soon turned to the center of the hall, where Kalen himself would choose a partner for the ceremonial dance. Ilara froze as he approached, scanning the crowd. And then, his eyes found hers. It was impossible to look away. She could feel his gaze as though it were a physical weight pressing on her chest. The world around her blurred. For the first time in 8 years, Ilara's carefully constructed armor of invisibility felt fragile. Kalen stepped closer, and she felt the inevitability of being noticed. "You," Kalen said, his voice calm but sharp. "Come to the center." Ilara's stomach turned. She opened her mouth to protest, but words faltered. The nobles around them whispered, their voices like the hiss of snakes. She felt their curiosity and their judgment pressing down on her, and she realized that the truth of her strength might finally be revealed. She moved reluctantly, trying to keep her limp convincing. Every step was a test, every breath measured. Kalen reached for her hand, his touch light but commanding. Her pulse raced. The music swelled as they reached the center of the hall. The dancers around them seemed to fade, leaving only the king and the woman who had hidden herself for so long. "Do you always hide so well?" Kalen asked, his eyes locking onto hers. There was no mockery in his tone, only curiosity and a quiet power that made her knees tremble. I am just cautious," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He tilted his head, studying her. "Cautious can be wise, or it can be fear." Ilara forced herself to meet his gaze. There was something in him, something that went beyond the cruel reputation, something that spoke of depth, of shadows he carried within himself. She understood, suddenly, that he was not merely a king. He was a man bound by rules and curses, shaped by a world that demanded perfection. And she, too, was shaped by her secrets and survival. The dance began. Kaylin's hand was firm at her waist, guiding her through steps she had not practiced. She stumbled slightly, the limp betraying her. The music twisted around them, a spell of sound and movement. She could feel the eyes of the hall upon her, the judgment, the curiosity. But Kaylin did not flinch. Instead, he leaned closer, his dark eyes unyielding. "You are stronger than this," he said, his voice almost a whisper meant only for her. "Far stronger than you let others see." Ilara's chest tightened. No one had ever seen her strength. She had hidden it so carefully for fear of being claimed, for fear of losing herself. Yet here he was, calling it out, drawing it into the light. She did not know whether to resent him or be grateful. As the dance continued, Kaylin led her through spins and turns that required trust. Each movement tested her, and she realized that the act of pretending weakness was no longer enough. She could feel the pulse of her own strength beneath the mask, and Kaylin seemed to sense it, his eyes glimmering with acknowledgement. The hall grew silent as their dance reached its peak. The nobles watched, mesmerized by the tension between them. It was not merely a dance of music and motion, it was a dance of will, of defiance and claim, of hidden fires meeting unspoken power. Ilara felt a rush of exhilaration she had never allowed herself to feel. And then, the final spin. Ilara faltered. Her limp, which had protected her for so long, became exposed. A gasp rose from the crowd. Kaylin caught her firmly, holding her steady. There was no anger in his eyes. Instead, there was a strange, dark amusement and a spark of admiration. "You cannot hide forever," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "And I would not have you do so if you could not." Ilara's heart pounded. For 8 years, she had believed that hiding was her only protection. Now, faced with the Alpha King, she realized that hiding might no longer be enough, and that perhaps she did not want it to be. Fear and fascination warred within her. As the music ended, Kaylin released her hand, but did not step away. He studied her as if seeing her for the first time, yet as if he had always known her. The crowd erupted into polite applause, but Ilara could hear nothing. She could see nothing. Her mind was consumed by the weight of his gaze, the power he held, and the undeniable pull between them. "You are remarkable," Kaylin said softly, almost to himself. "Do you know what danger hides behind strength? Or do you live thinking the world cannot touch you?" Ilara swallowed hard. She did not answer. She could not. His words stirred something deep inside her, a mixture of fear, longing, and recognition. She had spent years avoiding him, avoiding claim, avoiding the truth of her own power. And now, there was no avoiding him, and perhaps no avoiding herself. Kaylin stepped back slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You have lived in shadows for too long," he said. "Soon you will have to step into the light, and I will be there to see you." Ilara's breath caught. She wanted to retreat, to vanish into her careful disguise. But something inside her, a spark she had hidden even from herself, flared. Perhaps this was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when her 8 years of careful avoidance would collide with the destiny she had so long evaded. The festival continued around them, but Ilara felt as if she were suspended in a moment outside of time. Kaylin's presence, his unspoken challenge, left her both terrified and alive. She had survived 8 years of pretense, 8 years of hiding, and now, for the first time, she wondered if survival alone was enough. Cliffhanger. As she returned to the shadows of the crowd, Kaylin's voice followed her, quiet but commanding. You cannot hide from me forever, Ilara, and I do not intend to let you try. Ilara's heart raced. 8 years of careful lies had led to this. The question that lingered in the dark corners of her mind was no longer whether she could escape him, but whether she wanted to. The night after the festival, Eldrath was quiet, but the castle hummed with energy. Torches flickered along the high walls, casting shadows that danced like spirits. Ilara walked alone in the courtyard, her steps careful, her limp subtle. Every breeze reminded her of the music and the gaze of Kalen, the Alpha King. She had survived so long hiding, yet now she felt an unfamiliar pull, a weight of inevitability she could not shake. Her thoughts were interrupted by a shadow moving across the courtyard. Kalen appeared as if he had stepped from the darkness itself, his presence commanding and silent. He stopped a few paces away, watching her, and for a moment the world narrowed to only the two of them. "You move well," he said, his voice low, carrying both curiosity and challenge. "For someone who pretends to be weak." Ilara stiffened, unsure if she should respond. His eyes were not accusatory. They were studying, searching. She had spent years perfecting her disguise, and yet with one look, he seemed to see through it. I like to keep up appearances," she said finally, her voice steady despite the thrum of her heart. Kalen stepped closer. "Appearances can be dangerous. They tell lies to the world, but they tell truths to those who know how to look." Ilara did not understand exactly what he meant, but a shiver ran down her spine. She had always known that one day her secret might be discovered, but she had never imagined the discovery would come with fascination instead of anger. "You have lived carefully," Kalen continued, circling her like a predator studying its prey, "but your caution does not suit you. Strength suits you better." "Strength is dangerous," Ilara replied softly, almost a whisper. "It brings attention, enemies, responsibility." He smiled faintly, almost cruelly. "Attention is inevitable. Responsibility is unavoidable. And enemies, well, they come for everyone who dares to stand." The tension between them was thick, almost tangible. Kalen was testing her, pushing her boundaries without touch, without force. He wanted to see how she moved under pressure, how she reacted to his presence, how much of herself she would reveal without a word. Ilara realized something startling. She had been hiding from him, yes, but also hiding from herself. 8 years of pretending weakness had kept her safe, but it had also kept her from knowing her own limits. Kalen was forcing her to confront that truth, whether she wanted to or not. "You think you can hide from the world," Kalen said, his gaze piercing, "but the world has already seen the fire in you, and so have I." Ilara swallowed, her mind racing. Could she trust him? Could she allow herself to reveal even a fraction of the power she had spent so long concealing? Her pride and caution warred with a curious excitement, a desire to see if he could match her will. "I do not want to be claimed," she said finally, her voice steady but carrying an edge. "I have learned how to survive alone." Kalen's eyes darkened. "Survival alone is not living." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The courtyard felt smaller, the night quieter. Then Kalen extended his hand, a simple gesture. Yet it carried weight and command. "Dance with me," he said, his voice low and firm. Ilara's heart leapt. This was no festival dance. This was not ceremony. This was a test, a challenge, and perhaps an invitation all at once. She hesitated, but the fire in his eyes dared her to refuse. She placed her hand in his, and he guided her through steps she had not prepared for. With each turn, each movement, she felt her strength tested. Kalen's hand at her waist was firm, unyielding, yet not cruel. She realized that this dance was not about submission. It was about balance, about recognizing power and learning to wield it without fear. "You are strong," Kaelin murmured as they moved. "Stronger than most who wear crowns, yet you hide it too well." Ilara could feel the truth of his words like a pulse through her chest. For years, she had cloaked herself in weakness, pretending to be fragile, careful not to draw attention. But with Kaelin, the act felt pointless, even impossible. His presence demanded honesty, demanded recognition of what she had always known but had never admitted even to herself. The dance ended, but Kaelin did not release her hand. Instead, he studied her with a curiosity that was almost intimate. "Tell me," he said softly, "why do you hide from the world? From me?" Ilara met his gaze, searching for threat but finding only something deeper, something that mirrored her own hidden fire. I have to protect myself," she said, "and what I have is not for others to claim." Kaelin's eyes narrowed slightly. "You have talent, skill, strength. You fear they will take it from you, or that they will claim you because of it. But the truth is, strength like yours does not need to hide." Her pulse quickened. He was right, and she hated to admit it. Hiding had become habit, a shield, but it had also been a cage. And Kaelin, in his relentless way, was holding the key. "You have been cautious for 8 years," he continued, his voice low and commanding. "But now the world will not wait, and neither will I." Ilara's breath caught. She had spent so long evading him, evading destiny, evading attention. And now, here he was, forcing her to face it all. Fear mixed with excitement, uncertainty with a strange sense of freedom. She realized that for the first time, she was confronting her own power openly. Over the next days, Kaelin found ways to draw her into situations where her strength could not be hidden. He sent her on tasks that required skill, intelligence, and courage. Tasks that challenged her, forced her to think quickly, and tested her resolve. She moved through the palace, through secret chambers and ancient halls, always aware of his gaze, always aware of the tension that existed between them. Ilara began to understand that this was more than a test. Kaelin was not merely curious or interested. He was seeking someone who could match him, someone who could stand in power beside him. And for the first time, she considered the possibility that she did not need to hide from him. One evening, Kaelin led her to a secluded balcony overlooking the kingdom. The moon was full, casting silver light across the city below. He gestured for her to follow the rhythm of his steps, guiding her through a silent, private dance. It was not about ceremony this time, it was about connection, about understanding, about revealing who they were beneath the layers they both carried. "You are not like others," Kaelin said softly. "You move with purpose, with fire, and yet you fear it will consume you if seen. But fire, when controlled, can warm, can protect, can illuminate." Ilara felt her chest tighten. His words resonated deep inside her. She had always seen her strength as a weapon, as something dangerous, something that must be hidden. But perhaps it could be more than that. Perhaps it could be a bridge, a way to connect, to survive, to be seen without fear. As the night deepened, Kaelin's gaze never left her. He leaned closer, not threatening, but commanding attention. "Do you trust me?" he asked, almost a whisper. Ilara hesitated. Trust had been foreign to her for so long, a dangerous gamble, and yet there was something in Kaelin's eyes that made her consider it, not blindly, not without caution, but with a flicker of hope she had long denied herself. I will try," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. Kaelin nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "That is all I ask for now. The rest will come." The night ended with no grand declaration, no ceremony, only the quiet promise of understanding and challenge. Ilara returned to her rooms, her mind spinning with the events of the evening. For 8 years, she had hidden from the world, from kings, from destiny. And now, she realized, the world, and Kaelin, would not let her hide any longer. Cliffhanger. As she drifted into uneasy sleep, a soft knock came at her door. A small, sealed envelope rested at her bedside. Written in Kaelin's hand were the words, "Your caution has served you well, but the time to face what you hide is near. Tomorrow, you will dance not for survival, but for truth." Ilara's pulse quickened. She understood that her life of careful pretense was ending. The Alpha King had seen her fire, and she would have to choose whether to fight it, run from it, or embrace it, and she knew that the choice would change everything. The sun rose over Eldrath with a pale, hesitant light, as if the kingdom itself sensed that something momentous was approaching. Ilara stood at the edge of the castle balcony, watching the streets awaken below. Her mind was still on Kaelin's note, the one that promised she would dance not for survival, but for truth. She felt a mixture of anticipation and unease. For 8 years, she had moved carefully, always hiding, always pretending. Now the carefully built walls of her world were shaking, and she could not tell if she wanted to rebuild them or let them fall. The morning air carried a chill that spoke of changes beyond her understanding. The castle gates opened with a low creak, and the sound of hooves approached. Ilara turned to see Kaelin standing in the courtyard, his dark cloak billowing in the wind, his expression unreadable. He was calm, but the presence he carried was undeniable, as if the ground itself bowed slightly beneath him. "Ilara," he said, his voice carrying over the stones, "it is time." She swallowed, steadying her pulse. "Time for what?" she asked, though she already knew. "The dance," he said simply, "and for truth. The kingdom is not as safe as it appears. A threat stirs in the north. And you, hidden as you are the key to facing it." Ilara's brow furrowed. She had lived quietly for years, avoiding attention, avoiding danger, and now Kaelin was not only drawing her into the light, he was asking her to face peril directly. Yet something in the tone of his voice gave her courage, or perhaps it was the thrill of finally confronting what she had been avoiding all her life. He gestured for her to follow, and she did, careful yet willing. The corridors of the castle felt alive with the tension between them. Every step, every glance, every shared silence was a dance of its own. They moved in rhythm, even when no music played, and Ilara felt a strange sense of belonging she had never experienced before. Kaelin led her to a large hall at the heart of the castle. Its windows were tall and arched, letting in light that glinted off the polished stone floor. In the center, a circle had been drawn in chalk, ancient symbols etched along its edge. Ilara's heart quickened. She knew this was no ordinary dance. It was a ritual, a test, and perhaps a revelation all at once. "You will move with me," Kaelin said, his dark eyes fixed on hers. "Not as a subject, not as prey, but as an equal. Show me your strength, your courage, and your truth. Only then can we face what threatens Eldrath." Ilara nodded, though her pulse was loud in her ears. 8 years of pretending weakness had taught her how to move carefully, how to hide power, how to make others underestimate her. But this dance demanded honesty, demanded revelation, demanded courage she had not practiced showing. The music began, soft at first, the notes twisting like smoke through the air. Kaelin stepped forward and she met him halfway. Their movements were slow, deliberate, yet every step carried unspoken tension. The symbols on the floor seemed to glow faintly as they moved, reacting to their energy as if the room itself was alive. "You are not fragile," Kaelin murmured. You never were. You only pretended to be, and that pretense, it has protected you, but it has also kept you from yourself." Ilara's chest tightened. He was right. She had hidden for so long, believing it was the only way to survive. And yet, in hiding, she had never truly lived. Now, with every step, every turn, she felt something inside her awaken, a fire she had long denied, a strength she had long suppressed. The dance became faster, more intricate, each movement testing her balance, her focus, her resolve. Kaelin moved with the grace of a predator, commanding yet responsive, powerful yet careful. Ilara found herself matching him, step for step, her mind and body awakening to the rhythm, to the challenge, to the truth he demanded she face. "You can do more than hide," he said as they spun together, "more than survive. You can confront, you can fight, you can shine." Her heart pounded, but she felt a clarity she had never known. 8 years of pretending had been a shadow over her life. But now, each movement she made was an assertion of who she truly was. She was not weak. She was not broken. She was powerful, clever, and alive. As they reached the center of the circle, the symbols on the floor glowed brighter. A faint hum filled the hall, resonating with the rhythm of their steps. The ritual was working. The ancient magic was responding to their combined energy. Ilara realized that this dance was more than a test of strength. It was a key, a way to awaken forces she had never imagined she could control. Suddenly, a shadow moved along the edge of the hall, a ripple of darkness that sought to disrupt the ritual. Ilara tensed, but Kaelin's hand remained steady on her waist. He nodded, almost imperceptibly, and she understood. She would face this threat not alone, but together. The shadow surged forward, and Ilara felt the pulse of fear, but not weakness. She moved instinctively, her steps guided by the dance, her energy aligning with Kaelin's. The darkness recoiled, unable to withstand the strength and focus they projected. The symbols on the floor flared, and the shadow dissipated like mist in the sun. Ilara's breath came in quick bursts, but she felt exhilarated, alive in a way she had never allowed herself to be. She had faced danger. She had faced Kaelin's challenge, and she had not only survived, she had risen. Kaelin's gaze met hers, dark and intense. "You see now," he said softly, "what hiding has cost you, and what embracing yourself can give you." Her chest heaved, but a small smile tugged at her lips. For the first time, she did not feel fear of him. She felt respect, understanding, and a connection she had never known possible. She had met his strength with her own, and the result was extraordinary. But even as the excitement settled, a new awareness took hold. The threat in the north was real. Eldrath was not yet safe, and the bond forming between them, while powerful, was only the beginning. They would have to face more trials, more shadows, more forces that sought to control or destroy what they were building together. Kaelin stepped back slightly, releasing her hand, but not her attention. "You are ready," he said. "But ready is only the beginning. The true test comes when the world outside this hall reaches for us, when we must move not in safety, but in danger." Ilara nodded. She felt stronger than she had in years, yet she understood the weight of what lay ahead. 8 years of hiding had prepared her for careful survival. This new path required courage, trust, and partnership, qualities she was only beginning to explore. The night ended with no fanfare, no ceremony, only the quiet hum of magic lingering in the hall and the unspoken promise that what they had begun could not be undone. Kaelin's gaze followed her as she left, full of curiosity, challenge, and something more, an invitation she could not yet name. Cliffhanger. That night, as she rested in her room, a soft wind carried a message through the castle. A shadow had been seen moving in the northern forests, one that pulsed with dark energy, seeking the kingdom's ruin. Kalen's handwritten note appeared on her desk. "Prepare yourself. Tomorrow the dance will be with shadows that do not bend, and we will face them together." Ilara's heart raced. 8 years of pretense had led to this moment. The time for hiding was over. She would have to confront not only the threat to Eldrath, but the fire within herself, and the Alpha King who had awakened it. The northern forests of Eldrath were dark and thick, the trees twisted like ancient sentinels. Mist clung to the ground, curling around roots and rocks, hiding what moved beneath. Ilara rode beside Kalen, her senses alert, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and determination. For the first time in 8 years, she felt fully alive, no longer hiding, no longer pretending. The fire within her had been awakened, and she knew the coming battle would test everything she had learned. Kalen rode beside her, calm and controlled, his presence steadying the tension in her body. Though his reputation was one of fear and command, now she saw another side, someone who moved with patience, strategy, and trust. He had taught her that strength was not only in power, but in knowing when to act, when to trust, and when to surrender control to circumstance. "The shadow in the north is ancient," Kalen said, his voice low over the clip of hooves. "It has been dormant for centuries, waiting for a weakness. Eldrath is strong, but it cannot withstand it alone. That is why you must stand beside me." Ilara nodded. Her hands rested lightly on the reins, but her eyes never left the mist ahead. She had lived for years pretending weakness, hiding and surviving. Now she understood that strength required exposure, required courage, required willingness to be seen. And Kalen had shown her that truth could be both terrifying and freeing. As they approached the edge of the forest, a chill settled over them. Shadows moved unnaturally among the trees, dark shapes that seemed almost alive. The symbols from the dance, the ritual from the castle, had left traces of energy in her body. She could feel it pulsing, guiding her movements, sharpening her awareness. She had never felt so connected to her own strength. Kalen dismounted silently and gestured for her to do the same. "We move together," he said. "Trust your instincts, and trust me." Ilara stepped lightly onto the forest floor. The mist seemed to swirl around her as if testing her. She felt the pull of magic, the ancient pulse that had haunted Eldrath's northern borders. She knew the shadows would come for them, but she did not feel fear in the same way she had before. She felt readiness, the clarity of someone who had lived in hiding and now faced her destiny. Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, moving faster than any human could. They were shapes of darkness, shifting and twisting, pulsing with malevolent energy. Ilara instinctively stepped into the rhythm of the dance she had learned with Kalen. Each movement aligned her energy with his, creating a protective circle that pushed the shadows back. Kalen's voice guided her through the chaos. "Focus, Ilara. Do not fight them alone. Flow with the motion. Control the energy." She felt it. Her limbs moved with precision, her mind sharp and calm, and together they created a shield of light and movement that repelled the dark forces. The ritual from the castle had not just been a test. It had awakened a power she could wield. The shadows recoiled, unable to breach the combined force of her strength and Kalen's command. "You are extraordinary," Kalen said as they advanced, his hand brushing hers briefly in a signal of unity. "Never doubt yourself again." Ilara's heart surged, not with fear, but with determination. 8 years of hiding had led to this moment. She was no longer pretending. She was no longer fragile. She was alive, powerful, and essential. The battle continued deeper into the forest. Shadows twisted around trees, attempting to encircle them. But Kalen and Ilara moved as one. He guided her through steps of strategy, while she adapted and reacted, her instincts sharpened by years of evasion. Together, they were unstoppable. At the heart of the forest, they found the source. A great shadowed tree, ancient and twisted, its roots like black veins across the ground. The darkness emanated from it, pulsing with a slow, rhythmic energy, as if the forest itself were alive and breathing with menace. Kalen stepped forward. "This is the core. We end it here." Alara nodded, feeling the power inside her respond. The ritual, the dance, the trust. They had led her to this point. She no longer feared the shadows, because she understood that her strength combined with Kalen's could confront anything. They began a coordinated movement, almost a dance, circling the tree, their energy flowing outward, weaving a pattern that pushed the darkness back. The tree shuddered, and the shadows writhed, resisting, but their combined force was greater. Ilara felt the fire within her, the power she had hidden, and she let it flow freely. Kalen matched her movements, steady, guiding, amplifying her energy. For a moment, it felt as if time had stopped. The shadows froze, the forest held its breath, and all that existed was the rhythm of their power, the dance of fire and shadow. Then, with a final synchronized movement, they channeled all their energy into the core. The tree trembled violently, and a wave of light erupted, sweeping across the forest. The shadows screamed and dissolved, vanishing like mist under the morning sun. The forest was quiet again. Birds began to sing, the mist lifted, and the weight of the ancient darkness had been lifted. Ilara sank to her knees, exhausted but exhilarated. She looked at Kalen, who knelt beside her, his hand brushing her shoulder in a gesture of acknowledgement and respect. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it. Together." Ilara allowed herself a small, genuine smile. She had faced the shadows, the danger, and the truth of her own power, and she had done it not alone, but with someone who had seen her strength, challenged her, and accepted her as she was. Kalen helped her to her feet. "You are remarkable, Ilara," he said. "Never doubt the fire within you. It has saved more than just yourself. It has saved Eldrath." Her chest rose and fell with exertion and relief. 8 years of pretending, hiding, surviving had led to this moment of clarity and triumph. She was no longer a shadow, no longer a secret. She was a force, a partner, and a presence that could not be ignored. As they walked back to the castle, the dawn breaking over the horizon, there was a quiet understanding between them. The dance of survival had ended. The dance of trust, of recognition, of partnership had only just begun. They returned to the castle to find the nobles and citizens waiting, their eyes wide with awe. News of their victory had spread quickly. Eldrath had been saved, but more importantly, a new alliance had been forged. Kalen and Ilara walked together through the crowd, not as king and subject, not as ruler and servant, but as equals, united by shared trials and mutual respect. In the quiet of the evening, Kalen led Ilara to the balcony overlooking the kingdom once more. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with gold and crimson. He took her hand gently, holding it with care. "You have faced fear, you have faced darkness, and you have faced yourself," he said, his voice steady and soft. "And you have risen. I am honored to stand beside you." Ilara's heart swelled. For 8 years, she had hidden from the world, from kings, from destiny. Now she understood that hiding had been a necessary lesson, but it was not her future. Her future was strength, courage, and the freedom to move as she chose. I could not have done it without you," she said quietly. "You challenged me, guided me, trusted me when I did not trust myself." Kalen smiled, dark and sincere. "And I will continue to challenge you, guide you, and trust you, because you are not just powerful, you are extraordinary, and together we can face anything." Elara looked out over the kingdom, the wind in her hair, the light of the setting sun reflecting in her eyes. She felt whole for the first time, her strength recognized, her courage validated, and her heart awake to possibilities she had never imagined. Cliffhanger. Resolution. As the stars began to twinkle above Eldrath, Kaelin drew her close, not as a king claiming a subject, but as a partner claiming a fellow soul. "The world will continue to test us," he said softly. "But whatever comes, we face it together. You are no longer hiding, Elara. You are alive. You are free. And you are mine to stand beside, as I am yours to stand beside." Elara closed her eyes for a moment, letting the truth of those words sink in. 8 years of pretense, 8 years of hiding had ended. She had survived, she had grown, and she had chosen her path, not as a shadow, not as a secret, but as a force to be reckoned with, side by side with the Alpha King who had awakened her fire. The kingdom below was safe. The shadows had been vanquished. And in that moment, as wind and starlight embraced them, Elara understood the power of trust, of courage, and of the dance that had brought them together. The dance was not over. It was only the beginning.